If your best friend needed your help, would you listen to them or would you just slam the door in their face? Kamala Harris and almost half of the Democrat caucus in Congress just slammed the door in the face of our closest ally, Israel. It's a shame. It's an embarrassment. But more than that, it shows that our nation is shifted, moving away from its core principle values of valuing our friends and our allies to something quite different. And not everyone feels that way. Not everyone feels that way. You know, since 1948, America's been steadfast, and everybody knows this in its support for the Jewish state. There are so many people within Congress that have been very open and honest and unafraid and unabashed to say, yes, I believe in a Jewish state. I'm a Zionist. I believe in this. I believe in the state of Israel. And I believe that Israel had a right to defend itself just as I did, the same way. And I've been very open. I've spoken about this often on the podcast. Right to defend itself against the Hamas terrorists, against Iran, and the brutality and the horror of what happened to the state of Israel on October 7th. It's just beyond comprehension. And the lives lost since. Unfortunately, many of the radical left are willing to throw this friendship away. They just want to throw it away because of false claims about genocide, oppression, warfare, what's happening in Gaza, most of which, folks, is Iranian lies and propaganda. And I would say not just from Iran. I would say other adversaries of the United States and Israel are involved in pushing those lies on social media, moving money to groups that are anti-American, even here in the United States, and pushing our youth through professors, which I saw with my own eyes on campuses, that are just propaganda machines for the Iranian cult regime. It is a cult regime that would have no problem, believe me, using nuclear weapons against its perceived enemies and Satan, which is us, and Israel. The little Satan, the big Satan. So if you think that appeasing any of these Islamist extremists, and I'm saying Islamists, because it's very different than somebody who's Muslim, but an Islamist, somebody who's an extremist, if you think there's any way of appeasing them, you are sadly mistaken, and you have become what Prime Minister Netanyahu calls the useful idiot for the regime. Right? The useful idiot. Nobody wants to be that. Under a Kamala Harris administration, I want you to think of how terrifying this would be. America would abandon its greatest ally. It would ignore the hostages held by Hamas terrorists. It would divide our countries and rip us apart, because in the end, the only winner would be our adversaries. And that would be Iran, and those that support Iran or those that are against Israel and the United States. We can't allow that to happen. On today's show, I have Rabbi Aryeh Lightstone. He is here to discuss Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu's visit to Congress. He was part of the Abraham Accords. Aryeh worked closely with Ambassador David Friedman on those accords and was an advisor to him and an advisor, continuing advisor in the United States. And he's here right now. And what this election, the most important election right now, I think, in the history of the United States of America, could mean for the future of the U.S.-Israel relationship. But first, folks, gold code. Did you know that experts call gold the everything hedge? Gold goes far beyond hedging against inflation or the stock market and gives you a peace of mind that your money is invested in something with real tangible value. That's why gold just hit another record high. And central banks, they just keep buying gold at a record pace. That's also why I've partnered with the top-rated company, Goldco. Listen to this current offer. You can get 10% instant match in free bonus silver with a qualified account. Plus, visit Sara, SARA-likesgold.com. That's Sara, SARA-likesgold.com to qualify for a free 1-ounce silver Ronald Reagan coin. Diversify your money with time-tested safe haven assets of physical gold and silver. And that's what I say, diversify. If you don't believe me, research for yourself. You'll just see how much gold has gone up. It is a safe haven for your investments. Today, Gold Co. is offering up to 10% instant match and free bonus silver with a qualified account. Plus, visit SaraLikesGold.com to qualify for a free 1 ounce silver Ronald Reagan coin. That's SaraLikesGold.com or call 855-823-GOLD, SaraLikesGold.com or call 855-823-GOLD. So happy to have once again Rabbi Aryeh Lightstone on the show, on the Sarah Carter Show here with us. You're a former senior advisor to Ambassador David Friedman, who's just an incredible man. I was lucky to see him recently, Rabbi, and you played a key role in the creation of the Abraham Accords with him. And you're also the author of Let My People Know, the incredible story of Middle East peace and what lies ahead. First, let me ask you this before you say anything. Still believe that there could be peace in the Middle East in what lies ahead, even after what we've seen on October 7th and beyond?
Not only do I still believe it, but I believe that it is closer than it's ever been. And that's for three distinct reasons. Reason number one is it's very important to know who sits on the other side of the table. And Hamas revealed themselves to not be worthwhile people on the other side of the table. They have demonstrated themselves to not be worthwhile people on any table. What they perpetrated on October 7th and have promised to continue perpetrating. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't I got over my skis. I didn't mean to do this. This is a group of people who perpetrated the worst massacre to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And that perpetration continues to this day, not only in their promises to keep doing it, but in the fact that they have over 100 hostages still in the hell that is the tunnels of Gaza. That's not a whoopsie. I didn't mean to do this. This is I am continuing to do this. And so when there's a call for ceasefire or there's a call to allow Hamas to continue to be in control, that is a call from Western civilization to allow Hamas to win because they've told you who they are. Now, the advantage to knowing who they are is you know that you cannot make peace with them. You cannot sit with them. You cannot negotiate with them. You must defeat them. And when you can identify your enemies for complete and total defeat, then you can look at your friends and you can talk about complete and total alliances. And I think that's part of the issue in the Middle East that was never clear until Donald Trump came along. It was very unclear in terms of who could be what and where. Like this whole concept of the two-state solution was this made-up idea that the Palestinians, if we just do one more thing, if we just give them one more thing, if we give them one more day, one more year, one more decade, they'll eventually improve their behavior. Well, Hamas has now had nearly 20 years of complete and total control of the Gaza Strip, and they did not turn it into Dubai. They did not turn it into Singapore. They turned it into hell on earth, where they took all of their means and either enriched their leaders or use it in order to create a killing machine in order to kill Jews and murder Israelis. So number one is, sorry for the long answer, but number one is it's important to know who your enemies are, and it's important that the rest of the world knows who your enemies are also. But the second thing, and this has been night and day in terms of who's sitting in the White House, if we had actual leadership in the White House, if we even knew who the president was in the White House, this whole war would have gone on differently. But this whataboutism that we've gotten from the Biden-Harris administration has given Hamas leverage at the table. It's given them the ability to consider themselves as a opponent in a worthy matchup. Revolutionaries fighting against occupation is sort of the theme. Nobody in the Middle East believes that Hamas has a seat at the table. Nobody in the Middle East believes that Hamas is a worthy opponent. The Saudis, the Emiratis, the Bahrainis, the Moroccans know that Hamas is not Islam, know that Hamas is not legitimate, and knows that Hamas needs to be defeated. And to me, it's very interesting to watch these new allies of Israel have greater clarity on what needs to happen in the Middle East than the Biden-Harris administration. And number three, just to conclude there, is I believe Donald Trump is going to win. And I believe that one of the recipes that was behind the original Abraham Accords was Obama was so terrible that it brought countries together in their mutual fear and hatred of Iran and, frankly, distrust of the Obama administration. If Obama was bad, Biden was worse. If Biden was worse, Harris is unfathomably terrible. which means that all of these countries are prepared to get together with the right leadership to fight Iran, hopefully not physically, hopefully we can defeat them purely economically, and to defeat Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis.
Well, absolutely I'm glad you took your time to explain that, because I think a lot of people that are listening really don't have a full concept of what Israel is dealing with in the Middle East, as far as like the internal politicking, and as well as dealing with that, what is happening here in the United States. I could say one thing is certain: Iran uses Hamas like it uses Hezbollah, like it uses other organizations all across the world as proxies in their terror war. And you're right. You're absolutely right. Saudi Arabia, the Persian Gulf states, they realize that the push for Iran to create this like Shia crescent in the Middle East is a threat not only to the state of Israel, but it's a threat to them. It's a threat to the Western world, which is in turn a threat to them as well, and a threat to us here at home. I want to play a clip from Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech. And I just want to preface that by stating that as I was watching his speech before Congress, there were some moments where I was so moved that I was brought to tears, because just the thought of your child, and I had gone to Kibbutz Be'eri. I saw with my own eyes what had happened in Israel after October 7th, and it's haunted me ever since. And I think for any American, that didn't understand what the Israeli people had gone through, but that took the time to watch the Prime Minister's speech, really got to feel for the reality and the struggle of the Jewish people, the Israeli people, whether they're Muslim, Jewish, Druid, whatever they are, wherever they're from, even if they're just Americans and they've gone to live there, they've gotten a feel for what it's like to live under that duress by these monsters. But I want you to take a listen to what he says right here.
Friends, this is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life. For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose.
So powerful. So powerful. When we stand together, we win and they lose. Talk a little bit about that importance. And and I'm so grateful that you're discussing, a future presidency, possibly under President Trump. I believe he's going to win as well. I believe it's going to be a big fight to the finish line. I don't think we should sit back and relax and, and think like this is in the bag. We've got it, because we never know what's going to happen. The stakes are so high here, and we have enemies that do not want to see that succeed. So talk a little bit about that importance and why you're out here right now, working to ensure that the message is getting across to the American people.
So I want to spend a lot of time on why I think the Trump victory is maybe the most critical election of our lifetime. And I know people say that at every election. I want to do it within the context of the 18 minutes that occurred 2 Saturdays ago. And in Judaism, 18 is a special number. Stands for Chai, which stands for life. But before I get to that, you played that clip, and I was in the room for the entire speech. The feeling was electric, and I am not too proud to tell you when I'm wrong. If Prime Minister Netanyahu's team would have called and said, should we come to the States after the debate, after the attempted assassination, after the COVID that Biden had, did it really make sense for Prime Minister Netanyahu to meet with the president who's clearly not the president, with a vice president who's not really sure who she is or what she is. And then should President Trump meet with him or not meet with him, and what does that look like? That's complicated. And to do a speech in Congress, I thought the risk was not, as they say, the juice is not worth the squeeze. And that was my feeling. And I said it publicly. I've written about it. I was wrong. I was dearly and deeply wrong. And what Prime Minister Netanyahu did, they compare him to Winston Churchill in terms of the amount of times that he spoke to the joint sessions of Congress. I'd like to make another comparison that I thought of last night, and it's probably not my original idea. When Winston Churchill came to Congress, he also described a clash of civilizations. He described what the British were fighting for and what the Nazis stood for. There was no call for ceasefire, right? When Winston Churchill demanded when the British would win, all of Western civilization would win. And if the British, God forbid, lost, all of Western civilization may lose. And he called upon America, who were neutral at that time, and said, you cannot be neutral. The Atlantic and the Pacific will not defend you from the loss of civilization to the barbarism of the Nazis. And that, I think, was what Prime Minister Netanyahu came to tell the American people. This is not a regular fight. This is a fight. It's a clash of civilization. And what I think is even more important is that we have in our White House today, in between Biden and Harris, Neville Chamberlain. They have been appeasing and appeasing and appeasing and waving a sign saying ceasefire. And what ceasefire means is peace in our times. We all remember the famous, neither of us remember, but we're familiar with the idea that when Neville Chamberlain came back from negotiating with Hitler and he declared to the English, we have peace in our time, I've resolved the problem. And it was that appeasement that led to World War II and to the animal that was Adolf Hitler and all of the Nazis. And we have led in this administration with appeasement after appeasement after appeasement, demanding ceasefire, demanding two-state solution, demanding all of these things that are the same thing as Neville Chamberlain saying peace in our time. And Prime Minister Netanyahu stood in the footsteps of Winston Churchill and said, we need to win this war. And something that America doesn't say often enough. President Trump is the first person I can remember speaking about this since Reagan. It's not enough that we win. They must lose. And when we stand together, we can win and they will lose. There's not a world where Hamas doesn't lose, where we can claim that Israel wins. And I thought it was such a powerful, important speech of moral clarity that should be required listening for every American civic student to understand what you need to stand for in life. And if you don't stand for that, ultimately, in the cases of many, you're the useful idiot of the Iranian regime.
That's such an important comparison to Neville Chamberlain, because Kamala Harris and whoever is running this White House, because as we well know, President Biden, although apparently elected, is not the person running the show in the White House, which is frankly quite terrifying to me, Rabbi, because I look at this nation, we're a republic. The buck is supposed to stop at his desk. He is the elected official of the United States of America, supposedly, but yet somebody else is running the show. And none of us have any idea who that is. We may suspect who that is, but the horror in this day and age of a Neville Chamberlain type of appeasement is much more frightening in the concept of, like, when Netanyahu was speaking about the state of Israel and saying, even after World War II, without this state to defend the Jewish people, I mean, where would we be? Where would the Jewish people be? Where would the Western nations be? It was horrifying, just the thought of that not existing. If we don't have someone in office that can stand firm against our enemies, Iran is a cult regime. I don't see them having any problem of their leadership utilizing nuclear weapons against what they perceive as their enemy, or the great Satan. That's both Israel and the United States.
Yeah, you cannot be more correct. And I want to make one point to something that you mentioned before. When you came to Israel, I was lucky enough to meet with you for a couple of minutes. Your listeners don't understand what it means to have somebody like you and the mission that you led come to Israel in the midst of war. What Israelis see on TV is they see the protests at Harvard, they see the protests at Columbia, and they see that the announcement is still chilling in my heart of the subway car in New York City where the masked man said, if there are any Zionists, this is your last chance to get off the train. Now, historically, Jews and trains, that's not a great connotation of when you're selected to be on or off of a train. And where were the ramifications? What has happened to any of these people? And when you're an Israeli and that's the news that you see, you suddenly start to believe that. And then when the president of the United States of America or the vice president of the United States of America stands next to the prime minister of Israel, who's fighting a moral and just war, and says, I'd like to tell you, Bibi, about the deaths of the Palestinian civilians. Now, Bibi's correct. He doesn't want to see a single civilian in Gaza die. He doesn't want it. He's not an animal. He's not a monster. But to not blame that on Hamas is such moral depravity. All you're doing is giving leverage to Hamas over there, and the Israelis see that. And then they listen to your podcast or they see you visit, and the others like you who come. And it's not tens of, it's not hundreds of, it's thousands of Israelis who have come to me and said it's like being given a warm hug. They may never see you personally, but they know what you do and what your listeners do and your allies. They've ruined the word allies also, but and people who are in the same camp have done. And for them, the Israelis no longer feel alone. So I don't want you to discount that. You were away from your family, you were away from your business, you were away from America. You should know that you uplifted an entire nation. And everybody who comes on those missions uplifts an entire nation, and the nation needs to be lifted up. So wow. please don't minimize that.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. It's those are such kind words. I'm overwhelmed with emotion right now, because for me, it feels as though if we are not together, then we will lose not only our own nations, each other, our spirit, our desire, our will to live, our civilization. I mean, this is absolutely a crossroads, as Netanyahu stated. We are at a crossroads. And this is from me to the people of Israel and to my many friends who I've made there and who I consider now family. I feel as though I am part of Israel's family when I travel there, and the people are so kind to me, and we have the same ideas, the same hopes, the same dreams for our children. And I have to tell you, when I used to work overseas in the war zone, and I remember covering, the Batula Masood and the Haqqanis in Pakistan, in the tribal belt that was in between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I remember going with the Pakistan military into Batula Masood's territory after they had killed him. And I was walking through one of the schools that had been hit by a drone. And it was a school. There were no children in it. They just decimated the area because what Batula Masood was doing was training children to be suicide bombers against U.S. Army personnel as well as against Pakistani military. And I looked on the walls, some of the walls that remained, and you could see the brainwashing. You know, the children were taught that if they become a suicide bomber, they will go to the land of milk and honey where their mothers will be waiting for them. They'll be great martyrs. And many times they would have secondary detonations on them because the children would be so scared when they would go to do the suicide bombing against the enemy, they thought perceived enemy, that the Taliban or the Haqqanis would have a secondary and they would blow them up. The horror of what is happening to the people in Gaza and the people that are and the children that are under the thumb of Hamas is nothing short of brutal abuse, child abuse. So the fact that we have people supporting Hamas, the fact that we have people supporting this degenerate cult regime that wants to see the end of the West is mind-boggling to me. And they are useful idiots. I want to play this clip. Iran's useful idiots. I think it was so important, and it was something very poignant that Netanyahu stated during his visit.
Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. Yet incredibly, Many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They stand with people who came into the kibbutzim, into a home. The parents hid the children, the 2 babies, in the attic, in a secret attic. They murder the families, the parents. They find the secret latch to the hidden attic, and then they murder the babies. These protesters stand with them. They should be ashamed of themselves. They refuse to make the simple distinction between those who target terrorists and those who target civilians, between the democratic state of Israel and the terrorist thugs of Hamas. We recently learned from the National Security Director, U.S. Director of National Intelligence, that Iran is funding and promoting anti-Israel protests in America. They want to disrupt America. So these protesters burn American flags even on the 4th of July. And I wish to salute the fraternity brothers at the University of North Carolina who protected the American flag against these anti-Israel protesters. For all we know, Iran is funding the anti-Israel protests that are going on right now outside this building. Not that many, but they're there, and throughout the city. Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think only Prime Minister Netanyahu could get the crowd inside Congress as a foreign leader so uplifted and motivated in the speech right before saying that, where they're chanting USA, and you could really feel the energy and the unity between the two nations right there at that moment. But then he goes on to say, who's outside our walls right now protesting us? Possibly Iran's useful idiots.
I want to make 2 comments on that. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I've got goosebumps just listening, because we were there with the USA at the RNC convention last week. I can't believe it's last week. It feels like 3 years ago at this point in time.
I know,
but, right? It's July is supposed to be slow.
Agreed.
2 things can be true. 2 things can be true at the same time. Anti-Semitism in America is at an all-time high. It has never been more scary to be a Jew, a Zionist, or pro-Israel in this country than it is at this moment. At the same time, at the RNC convention last week was the single most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish national event that has ever occurred in the history of this great country. And this is the greatest country in the history of the world. So that is saying something unbelievable. But I will tell you what made this the most pro-Jewish, pro-Israel event that I've ever attended, I think that has ever existed. It wasn't that on Wednesday night, when the nation got to meet J.D. Vance, that they listened to Lee Zeldin speak about Israel. They listened to Matt Brooks speak about Israel. They listened to Shabbos Kessenbaum speak about Israel. They listened to the hostage parents speak about their kid who was a hostage. All of that is true, and that is an incredible dedication of time of the RNC on the night that the world got to meet J.D. Vance. But when they honored the North Carolina frat boys The RNC sent a message to every Jew and every Zionist throughout America, and certainly throughout the rest of the world, but definitely in America, that this is not a Jewish problem. This is not a Zionist problem. This is an American problem. And when they burn an Israeli flag, they're burning an American flag. And I don't know how many all of your listeners know about Jewish history. That has never happened. There has never been a point in time that the ruling nation, the superpower of the world, has swept up the Jewish people who are there and said, you are not different because you're Jewish. You're unique because you're American. And that is in the 20 to 100 years of exile, that has never happened to the Jewish people. And one of the reasons why I think America is so blessed is because it is unique in doing that. But in my heart, what an incredible thing. And in the chamber, for the Prime Minister of Israel to lead the senators and congressmen chanting USA was incredible. But I will make one point. There were about 50 Democratic members of Congress and Senate who did not chant USA. I have no problem that they didn't cheer for anything that Bibi said about Israel. You disagree with Bibi, knock yourself out. They get credit for being in the room. So many of their colleagues boycotted. I'm happy they were there. I'm pleased that they were listening. In America, it's hard enough to get somebody to listen to you who disagrees. But how do you not clap for the flag of the United States of America? How do you not stand up for frat boys? How do you not, in general, maybe you don't need to stand up for frat boys, but for those guys, how do you not do that? What about you that represents your district in America thinks that a single member of your district would not be in favor of that? And that petrifies me because that's not the America I know. I've never met an American other than some elected leaders who want to see a burnt American flag. It's just not true.
I don't know, because now I'm seeing a shift, and this is what scares me. This is the crossroads, right? This is where Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech is so effective and so important, because as much as he talked about what unifies us and what we need to do to fight evil and to fight for Western civilization, he also said, wait a minute, we're at a crossroads now. You all have a choice. We all have a choice to decide which side of the road we are going to stand on and who we're going to defend. And I want to play this clip because this is where I want to ask you about a possible Harris administration and how dangerous that can be.
For Iran, Israel is first, America is next. So when Israel fights Hamas, we're fighting Iran. When we fight Hezbollah, we're fighting Iran. When we fight the Houthis, we're fighting Iran. And when we fight Iran, we're fighting the most radical and murderous enemy of the United States of America. And one more thing. When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that could destroy Israel and threaten every American city, every city that you come from, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you.
And he's right. And he's right. But so many Americans are unaware of this, because they're so separated from what's happening and because they've been lied to. They've been lied to not only by the media, for the most part, but by an administration that, like those 50 who kept their mouths shut, does not believe in an America First agenda, is not proud of the principles established in the Constitution, because I think they would be very happy to get rid of some of our amendments, and is willing to sell out to an enemy to put America last. And I believe that from the beginning, when Obama said, when he was in office, we're going to lead from behind. And he went on the apology tour throughout the Middle East before the Arab Spring. So I mean, this is like, for me, this is a very serious time in our history.
You could not be more correct. I will make one comment on that one. Having served in a critical position in between the U.S. and Israel, the exchange of intelligence and defense information, just in the 4 years I had the privilege of working with Ambassador Friedman, saved not tens of or hundreds, but thousands of American lives based upon advanced Israeli intelligence. And that relationship is incredibly symbiotic. The U.S. helps Israel enormously, but Israel punches way above its weight, its size, its GDP, in terms of its assistance to the United States of America and obviously all of our citizens. Here's a time where I think it's important to be reflective. We on the right have a challenge as well. There are those on the right who do not value the U.S.-Israel relationship and feel that Israel is a leech on the U.S. or a distraction from an America First policy. To them, I say the same thing. If you want to continue to lead, you need to pull our allies up and stand with them. We can discuss whether it requires economic contribution or not. That's a separate story. But to stand ironclad with our allies, if your alliances aren't worth anything, then what do they call a leader without any followers? Just somebody out taking a walk. And you don't get to be the superpower of the world unless you have followers. And my goodness, Israel will follow America to the brink. And if it started with Obama wanting to lead from behind, Biden, who is not sure where he is, Kamala is distinctly positive that she doesn't want to lead from behind. She wants to follow from behind. And this is the progression of this chain of, I'd call it leadership, but it's the exact opposite of leadership that will continue to destabilize the Middle East and the rest of the world and devalue the United States of America.
Some people on the right disagree with me. I am adamant. I put it on X, on my social media. I talk about Israel publicly on Fox News or here on my podcast, wherever I'm at. I absolutely believe that a strong allied relationship means something, that when we give our word, that when we work together to fight against a common enemy, we better stand firm and we better stand together on that. Or what are we? We will be nothing without that. And, you know, who are we going to turn to when the enemy is coming after us, right? If we abandon our allies, we can't do that. How does that make you feel when you see more people on the right? And there's some big names out there that are just, you know, I'm very concerned about how they're addressing the issue of Israel, how they're addressing this type of isolationism that I'm seeing rise up with some members of the right and the influence that they could possibly have on our nations. What do we do to overcome that, or to teach them that maybe this isn't the way? I mean, there's another way to do this.
Right. I think you can divide that group into three. You have some that are anti-Semites, and I think there are very few of them, but there's very little that's going to be able to overcome that hatred. And we, Jewish people have made it for 2,000 years with them in our face. Proportionally in America, this is the greatest we've ever had. So I find it very hard to complain about that. And we try to win those arguments on argument level, on principle level. Then you have those who I think have bought into a narrative. They're just not informed. Just like the protesters out in the street don't know the river to the sea, they don't understand that the $3 billion that the U.S. gives Israel every year is $3 billion that's spent in the U.S. on joint defense technology advancements that happen together. The semiconductors that exist and have been developed that give us our phones and the computers that we're on, the voice over IP technology is jointly developed, all of those things. And if we were just to look at this as a fund, if the United States of America is an investment bank, what is my return on my equity with the state of Israel? Likely it's our single greatest investment that we've made over the last 75 years. Israel has never asked for and never will ask for boots on the ground. It's going to ask for the military-industrial supply chain. That way it doesn't need to build its own. If it needs to build its own, it will build its own. And by the way, if Israel does, it's going to capture a lot of customers from the United States of America, and it will further hurt the manufacturing that the America First vision is all about. So it's contradictory. I think it's not well thought through, and it does get caught up in the Ukraine things. I do think that the Ukraine is something that needs to be discussed much more in depth, and there are a lot of challenges that this isn't the platform for it at this moment. And then you've got the third kind, which I think legitimately believe that the United States of America would be much better off just focused insularly, and they don't believe that America can do two things at once, which is to cure all of our internal problems and to address issues externally. And if I thought that was the case, by the way, I think I would agree with them. We need to change our educational system. We need to change our media. We need to change our entitlements. We need to change our prison system. We need to change so many things that are broken that if I thought that if we could leave the rest of the world alone for 20 years and just fix that, I'd be the first guy to vote for that. I really would. The power of the United States of America is the single most important thing on this planet. Unfortunately, Us focusing outside does not diminish our ability to focus inside. I believe we're great enough to be able to handle both. And the second is, if we truly ignore the outside world for that period of time that it would take to get our house in order, China will have overlapped us, Iran will be nuclear, and Russia will be in charge of the vast majority of Europe. So we just can't close our eyes and have that.
And there will be a global shift that we have never imagined. I mean, it will be a complete global shift in power. And we have to be willing to accept those consequences. What was it? For as long as we can keep her, for as long as we can keep it, right? Can we keep it? Right. Can we keep it? Can we keep this republic intact? Can we continue to keep the enemies at bay? Are we going to hold them accountable? Those are all the questions you're asking. What do you think, before I let you go? Because I could keep you, I could keep you forever. I could play every single clip and you will just, people will be like, is it tomorrow? Did she keep Aryeh on for like 2 days straight? But right now, you're here in America. You're an ambassador, to unifying both of our nations and to just, and I believe for Prime Minister Netanyahu as well, to get the message out to the American public and to donors and to those important influencers out there that, look, we want to work with America. We want to work with you. We want to build a stronger base with you. What is it going to take, Aryeh, for us to get to that point? And what is it that Israel needs now from us? And what do we need from Israel in order to move forward?
Yeah. So I'll tell you two things that I think. I like to be positive. I'm a Bible believing person. I've never seen it written in the Bible, but I think sometimes if you read the thing in its entirety, you absolutely are commanded to be positive, because the opposite is just too depressing. And I'm convinced that religion is not there to depress us. It's there to uplift us. So we need to be positive. Here's the point of positivity that has driven me to rededicate the next 100 and however many days to making sure that President Trump gets elected, and I'll tell you why. I do get to spend half the year in Israel. And since October 7th, I've been to far too many funerals. And I won't speak about the parents at these funerals that have unbelievable strength. It is earth-shattering strength. But I want to speak about 25 and 26-year-olds. Yeah, so these 25, 26, 27-year-old kids that I wouldn't trust to run my bagel store have put on these uniforms and have taken on this mantle of leadership, of service, of commitment, of sacrifice to other people, that if you want to be bullish about the future, my goodness, these people are not, they may come back to their jobs, they may come back to their homes, they may do all of those things, but they will change the country of Israel forever. It's not about the next car. It's not about the next startup. It's not about the next condo, although they'll all get new cars and condos and startups. But they are going to change the moral fabric of the country and rebuild it for the next 75 years in a way that, again, in a million years, I wish they learned this from any lesson other than October 7th. But if you want to meet, these are angels walking on earth with their sense of sacrifice. And you've been in war zones. You've met young men and young women like this in America. Most Americans don't know people who have served. In Israel, it is impossible to not know your neighbor who is currently serving. And when you know somebody who's serving and you see their sacrifice, you want to sacrifice something in their honor. So I see what these young men and women are doing for their country. And I looked around and I said, in the history of the Jewish people, when have my people ever had it better than the United States of America? And I look at Kamala flirting with anti-Semites and with Hamas, and I see Donald Trump as the single greatest president for the Jewish people in the state of Israel in history. And I said, how can I not do everything within my power to make sure that he can get reelected? And so whether that's fundraising, it's knocking on doors, it's speaking in churches, it's speaking in synagogues, it's simply saying that what happened on the Columbia University campus would not have happened under Donald Trump. The length of the war would not be going on under Donald Trump. There would not be 8 American hostages still in Gaza under Donald Trump. Iran would not be unleashing Hezbollah and the Houthis under Donald Trump. Israel would have already made peace with 5 other countries under Donald Trump. And so therefore, could I be making business deals right now and being likely more successful? I probably could. But is that the most valuable use of my time at this very moment? If those kids are putting their families and their jobs and their lives on hold, I can't go ask people for a couple of dollars. I can't go ask people to make sure that they fill out the registration to vote. So I and my family are fully dedicated to making sure that the most pro-Israel and pro-American president of our lifetime gets reelected, because I think that this is the clash of civilizations. And it's up to all of us to do no less than what we've seen other people be able to do in order to improve their country, to make sure that we improve ours as well.
Oh, God bless you, Rabbi, because I just 2 points there. You're absolutely right. I've been in war zones, and I remember I got goosebumps when you were talking about the young Israeli, troops that have been out there putting their lives on the line. And, my husband once told someone, they said, oh, the greatest generation was like the World War II vets. And my husband was out in the war zone, that very well, training young men and women out there in the fight in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he said, whoa, wait a minute. He goes, this is an all volunteer force. These are people just like those young Israeli troops when they said, wait, or older or younger, whatever. I'm getting on a plane. I'm going back to Israel. I'm going to fight for my country, right? I'm going to fight for our people. And they are the greatest. They are all the greatest generation. They might not have done great in the grocery store, at the bagel shop. Maybe they weren't perfect, but they have a sense of principle and a sense of loyalty and love that their families and God put in their hearts, and they are willing to sacrifice everything for their nation. And you are absolutely right, Aryeh. We are at a crossroads in our time, and God is calling all of us. Somebody said it's like Esther, right? Like Esther. For such a time as this, right? For such a time as this, like we are being called and we have a decision to make. Where are we going to stand? Are we going to run away and hide? Are we going to speak up and defend our allies? Are we going to stand tall and proud no matter what the consequences are? Because we know we are doing the right thing. That will be our own judgment of ourselves, depending on where they go. And that's why I'm with you. I'm 100% behind President Trump and this reelection campaign and with our allies and with you, my friend. And thank you so much for making me feel so welcome every time. And I look forward to going back to Israel again this year, and just so grateful to have such a beautiful experience there and such a great ally of our nation. Thank you.
No, thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. What a special opportunity that we get to cast a vote to determine our future. It's pretty awesome.
Hey folks, My Pillow. You know what? My dogs all love My Pillow dog beds. Your dogs should love them too. In fact, I've got Macy Daisy Buttercup underneath my desk right now, snoring away on her My Pillow bed. It's the small little My Pillow bed for my little Chihuahua, but I also have the big beds for my two labs. Yes, Astro Disastro and Danny McFanny. I know I have weird names for my dogs, but blame it on my kids. I also got Pika Lola. She uses the medium bed. Trust me, you're going to love these beds, and you can give them as gifts. Go to mypillow.com, mypillow.com/CARTER, and enter promo code Carter to get the My Pillow dog bed for, listen to this, as low as $25. You can't beat that. You can't beat that anywhere. Listen to what the dog bed does. The inner bed is removable, and the zippered cover is washable and dryable. Both cover and insert can be washed cold or warm on a regular cycle. Paw prints and plaid for the decor. So whatever you like to match your decor in your home, you can buy. And there's a variety of colors: brown, blue, green, pink, and so much more. And a 10-year warranty. Who gives you that? Give your dog great comfort. Visit mypillow.com/Carter and enter code Carter. Be sure to use the promo code Carter to get the $25 sale price. Again, mypillow.com/Carter and enter promo code Carter to get the $25 sale price on dog beds. Please keep your prayers going for the state of Israel, for all of our military, all of Israel's military troops, all the people around the world that are facing such horror of war. This should not happen to anyone. And I also pray to God that our nation finds peace once again, that we have a leader in office, President Trump, that will bring peace to not only our nation, but to the rest of the world, and that will once again uplift the principles that make our nation so beautiful, so great. Please make sure you're subscribed to the Sara Carter Show on your favorite podcast app. We really appreciate it. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. I want to say thank you to my crew who's always been there for me. Greg Columbus and Calvin McNally, everyone at Radio America. Thank you so much. I pray for all of you every single day, and love you so much. The exceptional work and the partnership that we've had has been incredible. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless President Trump, and God bless the great state of Texas.